Non-sponsored, ladies and gentlemen, non-sponsored. You know what's funny? I'm celebrating, Nicholas, if you knew. Ancient Egyptian Fanta. So here's the thing. Dear noble ones, today's the day. Today is the day of vindication. It is the day of vengeance. Today's the day, my friends. So on Nature here, but I've got a few open ready here in the tabs. We read, first human genome from ancient Egypt sequence from 4,800 years old teeth. 40 years after the first effort to extract mummy DNA, researchers have finally generated a full genome sequence from an ancient Egyptians. Big deal! And you know why this is a big deal, noble ones? This is a big deal because of the date. You see, this is not genome from an ancient Egyptians from the New Kingdom. This is not a genome of, but it's Ptolemaic Egypt. No, sir. This is from the very beginning of Egyptian history. We've got a full genome. So, if we consider some of the debates that I've had online over the years, this guy should be from what? Sudan? Am I right? Because if he's not, then we're going to have a problem. Because this is the very beginning of ancient Egypt. And I'll tell you all the details on who this person was, but let me just say that if anyone is going to try and say, oh, probably a tourist, this guy was pretty high, elite, pottery worker, so no, this was an ancient Egyptian, all right? Oldest and most complete ancient Egyptian human genome ever sequenced reveals ties to... I'm sorry, I need to do that. Mesopotamia. But this is not, you've seen nothing. You've seen nothing. Now here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. Ancient Egyptian genome reveals 4,500-year-old genetic ties to Mesopotamia. This is a big deal. So this study is a study that is very recent. Very recent. Finally, we see an ancient Egyptian genetic connections. And it's Levantine. Man, I've been saying this. Anyways, this is the actual study. This is the full study. I've already read the entire thing, which took a while. I'll be honest with you. And when it comes to the genomic stuff and all the detailed explanation, I think I might need help from a professional. But regardless of that, my friends, and for this one, I'm opening chat because I need to see what everyone and share the truth once and for all. I need to open this to everyone. Everyone. Now, it's not, I'll be honest, okay? Because you know me, I'm always intellectually honest, regardless of what people say. Of course, this is one person. So it's not that now I'm going to say every single ancient Egyptians had ties to the Levant, or that every single one had ties. But because I'm not the one who says they were all black, but I'm the one who said they were mixed, it seems like a certain expansion and population relocation already was a thing at the very beginning of ancient Egypt, as we always said. And now we have proof. So how about we have a look? Let's read a little bit from here, read a bit from there, and then we see. So, teeth from an elderly man who lived around the time that the earliest pyramids were built have yielded the first full human genome sequence from ancient Egypt. And I'm all for it. The remains are 4,800 to 4,500 year old, overlapping with a period in Egyptian history known as the Old Kingdom of the Age of the Pyramid. They harbor signs of ancestry similar to that of other ancient North Africans as well as people from the Middle East, researchers report today in Nature. This is huge. And I'll show you, because what we are reading today, if you do this, okay, it shouldn't be that surprising. Because you see, when people claim that the ancient Egyptians' origin is down here, they're out of their mind. When they say it's from here, I'm like, okay, fine, I can see some people moving, great. If they say from Sudan, I'm like, well, that's relatively close. And one thing that I do agree with a lot of people that are usually my intellectual opponents, but I still will say it if I agree, is that if we consider the African humid period, then yeah, the Sahara wasn't a barrier if we go really, really back in time. Like I'm talking 14,000 years ago, all the way up to 5,000 years ago. This was green and all that, so it wasn't a complete blockage. Problem is that what they fail to admit is that there is no barrier here either. And what people often don't realize, I suppose, is that the African continent is literally connected by land to Asia and the Near East, which means you can walk it. So how are people okay with thinking that the ancient Egyptians, they were all from this area, they're okay with them going through this, but when you say, but what about population movement like this, not to mention that you can move by sea, and we know for a fact that all of these populations, see the Phoenicians for example, did move by sea. So you can do this by sea, and you can do this by land, and yet they act as if there is a massive barrier here, which makes absolutely no sense. And now, not only we had clear indication of cultural continuity and connections between people from the Levant and ancient Egypt, because if ancient Egypt had zero connection to this section of the world and the Eastern Mediterranean, it would literally be the only North African area in the sea that would have zero connection, since Libya has those connections. Tunisia and Carthage, we just demonstrated that it's connected to the entirety of the Aegean, in fact, and to Europe up to a certain extent. And I know they're gonna hate me for saying that, but I'm not saying it. DNA analysis is, and that's the same all the way here. All of this coastline, including my beautiful island of Sicily, is being continuously moved, showed population clusters from this area to go, but for some reasons they didn't go to Egypt. It is obvious that this is a conduit of multi-ethnicity. It is multi-ethnic like the rest of it, of this area here, but yet they act like this is a barrier. Well, it's not, and now we have proof, because the one single complete genome that we have from this period genetically connected to this area of the... What you gonna say now? Are you gonna admit, oh wow, this goes away? Of course not. They're gonna say it's a lie. But who cares? I'm making this video for you, not for them. Abstract. Ancient Egyptian society flourished for millennia, reaching its peak during the Dynastic Period, approximately 3150 to 30 BC. However, owing to poor DNA preservation, questions about regional interconnectivity over time have not been addressed because whole genome sequencing has not yet been possible. Here we sequenced a 2 times coverage whole genome from an adult male Egyptian excavated at Nuwayrat. Sorry if I mispronounced it. This is south of Cairo, not too far from Memphis, in fact. Radiocarbon dated 2800 to 2800 BC, okay? He lived a few centuries after the Egyptian unifications, bridging the early dynastic and old kingdom periods. The body was interred in a ceramic pot within a rock-cut tomb. And by the way, it's because he was a potter, among other things, potentially contributing to the DNA preservation. Most of his genome is best represented by North African Neolithic ancestry among available sources at present. Yes, approximately 20% of his genetic ancestry can be traced to genomes representing the Eastern Fertile Crescent, including Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. So, this ancient Egyptian, we don't know how typical he was, but this ancient Egyptian has ties to local populations in North Africa and the Levant. Nothing further down. This genetic affinity is similar to the ancestry appearing in Anatolia and the Levant during the Neolithic and Bronze Age. But we did see that already the Carthaginians had Anatolian ancestry and Aegean ancestry, DNA and makeup. And once again, we see the same in Egypt. And it shouldn't surprise us because, again, North Africa is in the Mediterranean. This is what these people did. Whether you like it or not, these were seafarers. And they were settlers, they were colonizers, and they were spreading for economic reasons. Sometimes it's more a trade network. Although more genomes are needed to fully understand the genomic diversity of early Egyptians, as I was saying, of course, I'm not going to say one is enough, but according to certain people, this should have been a guy from Sudan. Our results indicate the contacts between Egypt and the Eastern Fertile Crescent were not limited to objects and imagery, such as domesticated animals and plants, as well as writing systems, but also encompassed human migration. And human migration means intermixing. And intermixing is exactly what we are finding here, since 20% is from the Levant. This is phenomenal. guys. This is like, it's exactly what I've been expecting. Like all the years where we were looking at the pictorial evidence, we were looking at the debating all the ways of, but it depends because the colors and the pigments. And then, but what about these vases? Because these vases are used as well. The same techniques are used in Mesopotamia. And they were like, no, because not from this place. We fought over this for years. Kept telling me I was lying. And now genomic, they do one, and it points to the Fertile Crescent. 0 DNA from Sudan or Horn of Africa and whatnot. It is notable that both our QPADM modeling and a mixture clustering excluded any substantial ancestry in the Nuwayrat genome related to the 4,500-year-old genome from Mota, Ethiopia, or other Central, Eastern, or Southern Africa. Southern Africa. I'm sorry. This is... We get a drink. Ooh, we need a drink, guys. Metatron. Metatron. But Metatron, you are being excessively pedantic. I know. New Metatron plushie limited pedantic edition has just dropped. Link in the description. Featuring historically accurate medieval brigandine, historically accurate hair length, and the words pedantic under his feet. He's very pedantic. If you like my channel, this is a great way to support the production of videos that are deeply researched and require quite a bit of time. And it's also a way to celebrate you as we are getting close to 1 million subscribers. Well, to be pedantic, if we add the subscribers from the second channel, we're already at 1 million. Hello, number ones. This is a limited edition and will only be available for a set amount of time, and then we will not produce them again. So get yours today, and thank you very much for your support. Does this mean that this man is white? No, but I never said that the ancient Egyptians of the freaking old kingdom, I'm gonna say this in full camera, because that's the thing, it's not like they stillman my argument, no, they strawman it. Did I ever say that the ancient Egyptians of the old kingdom were white? No, that would be stupid. I never said it. Were there white Egyptians? Yes. Now given, make period. Because they relocated people from Greece, all that area. And then, of course, as the Roman invade, then a higher percentage, they also create some settlements, apart from the ruling elite. But they created some settlements with Greeks relocated, and then the Romans relocate there. So yes, there is a certain amount of Egyptians, the people that could have been born in Egypt, but they were originally from, I don't know, Italia. We do have some surnames in Northern Africa that are Celtic in origin. So yes, some Egyptians could have been white at that time, but that would have been a minority in the population. The further back you go, the further likely it is that the population will be white, or European if you don't want to use the word white. Some may have been, because you could have had Carthaginians relocating there, and now we know the Carthaginians are of European origins from a DNA perspective. But when it comes to the bulk of the population, they were brown. And then some of them would have been black, and those percentages vary geographically and according to the time. This is what I said. I was right. Every single thing that I said now demonstrated by DNA analysis. And this is not a little small research. No. This was praised by professors at Harvard. This is peer-reviewed stuff. And it says every single thing that I've been saying and receiving backlash and hatred for years, all correct. Boom. This is what the genome says. Once again, the guy had brown skin. Yes, that doesn't make him an African though, because he's connected to the Levant. So unless you think that the Middle Eastern people that are more on the dark olive complexion, unless you think that those are black Africans, then the guy was not from Africa. Well, he was, because he was born in Northern Africa. I mean, just the other day, I read someone in the comments that told me, someone was telling me, hey, I'm black, but when I was a child, my teacher, I told her that Egypt is in Africa, and she told me, no, it's in the Middle East. Well, your teacher is an idiot. Egypt is in Africa. Of course it's in Africa. But, so the guy was African in the sense that he was born in the African continent, but he was not African in the sense that he was a black African. Not this guy. This is not what the DNA says. And so that's a fact now. Like, unless you're telling me that this is some kind of, well, I don't even care what they're going to use to try and justify this. How about we continue reading? I'm having a great time. I don't know about you. But this is great, guys. This is great. Yeah, so we were saying remains age of period, they harbor signs of ancestry similar to that of northern Africans, as well as people from the Middle East, researchers report today in Nature. We read it's incredibly exciting and important, says David Reich, a population geneticist at Harvard Medical School in Boston, who was not involved in the study. We, open quotes, we always hoped we would get our first ancient DNA from mummies, close quotes. Numerous labs have tried to extract DNA from ancient Egyptians' remains. In 1985, evolutionary geneticists, can't read that, reported the first ancient DNA sequences from any human, several thousand DNA letters from a 2,400-year-old Egyptian mummy. But this is a lot older, so it's even more significant, because what this tells us is that there were population movement patterns already 5,000 years ago from the Levant, which checks out, absolutely checks out. Now, does this tell us about the friggin' Paleolithic inhabitants of this area? No, it doesn't, but it does tell us about ancient Egypt. And at the end of the day, what population lived in North Africa in, at this point, 50,000 years ago, doesn't matter when you're talking about ancient Egypt, because there was no pharaonic ancient Egypt 50,000 years ago. So if that's the discussion we are having, then it's different. We can talk about that. But because these people, usually my opponents, talk about ancient Egypt, and this is ancient Egypt. This is the very beginnings, the dawn of ancient Egypt. And will you look at that? What were the chances that the one guy that we managed to do a genomic sequence, Levantine origin? Once again, I'll state it. The guy was not white. As far as I'm concerned, he can have dark brown skin. He can have black skin. It doesn't matter. He's not from Africa originally. He's from the Middle East. I mean, there are some Indians that are as dark as some black Africans. This is also to tell you how stupid it is to fixate on the words white and black when we talk about these things. But because they are the ones who fixate over it and weaponize the utilization of terms, they are the ones that say that the word Kemet, or Kumat, as it probably was vocalized, regardless, the word Kemet with the vowel of convention through Coptic, they are the ones that say Kemet means the land of the black, black meaning the people. But that's a modern way of using black that people didn't use back in the day. Even the Romans, it's not like they called black people black, they called them Ethiopians, meaning generally everyone of a phenotypic trait that would probably go from dark brown to jet black. But the Romans didn't call them black because that's a modern usage. But they do that. It's obviously the black soil opposed to the red soil of the desert. But no, they will say, no, it's the land of the blacks. It's not. It's stupid. You're reading it in a modern sense. And it's linguistic dishonesty. Because then when it's for them, then they'll tell you, well, white doesn't make sense because people didn't use it back then. Then why are you using black in the modern sense then? It's always a matter of intellectual dishonesty. But intellectually, dishonesty can only take you so far until genetic data is presented and it tells us Levantine. What you going to say now? Good. All right. Let's have a look at the study proper. I've already read the whole thing, by the way, but I would like to share it with you guys. You know, if you could clone an ancient Egyptian, because here is another thing. Chances are you could get a black guy, because as I say, particularly if he's from Upper Egypt, you could get a black person who is Egyptian because originally from Kush, but then they moved in there and then their children were brought up in Egypt, so now they're Egyptians. I don't have a problem with that. But if you go statistically, you know what I think? I think that the chances are he will look a lot like a modern Egyptian. And I've heard channels, I don't want to name the channels, but I've heard channels say, oh, when modern Egyptians dress up like ancient Egyptians, they are cosplaying. Well, that's disrespectful, because I do believe there is a certain level of genetic continuity as it's demonstrated here. And so it's very likely that even though some modern Egyptians might have ties to Arabs, others absolutely, particularly through the Coptic element, have ties to ancient Egypt. It's their land. So no, when they dress up as ancient Egyptians, they're dressing up as their ancestors. Once again, if you're a black African and you too have an ancestor who was black and from Egypt, they did exist, that's fine. It's only when they're like 100% black nation, then you're wrong, and DNA just proved you wrong. Well, that area, again, unless you go into the African humid period, that area is not going to be, and that's something that some people that usually argue on my side get wrong, and I do have to say that, is that there was a climate period in Africa. And as I say, it's usually around 14,000 years ago, where the Sahara was green, full of jungles and forests and rivers. Can you imagine that? And the reason is, it has to do with the Earth's axial tilt. So it actually has to do, you will have to, maybe I'll have to invite a cosmologist to really look into this, into the details, but generically, it's because something happened with the axis of the Earth, some changes. And these changes completely affected the climate in that area. And if you look at some of the recreations, so how the Sahara region looked in this specific period, it's mind-blowing to imagine that, full of grass and trees and lakes. It would have been incredible. So yeah, when some people say Sahara was a barrier, I'm like, yeah, when? You need to ask when, because otherwise you may be creating a straw man that lacks academic validity when you say that. I've seen some 3D recreations, and they look outstanding. And the same thing happened with Carthaginian. If you remember, I made my debunking video of that channel that was talking about Carthage, saying that the original inhabitants came from the Horn of Africa. They do full genomic testing. They are all from the Aegean, Anatolian Peninsula. GG, what can I tell you? Checkmate. The hate I'm gonna get for this, guys, but who cares? I'm here for you, because unfortunately this is an incredible news. Will there be other history channels that are gonna history focused channels that are gonna show this? I don't know. I think they're too afraid to be called racists, but you know me, I'm doing it for you guys. Fertile Crescent, thank you. Cultural exchange continued to develop through the last 4th millennium with the growing Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia. This period overlaps with the appearance of additional innovations in Egypt, that's something that I've already covered on my videos, by the way, such as the pottery wheel and the earliest evidence of hieroglyphic writing in the form of ivory tags in Tomb UJ at Abydos, which is a big one. Abydos? I'll go for Abydos. Dated to 3... Yeah, of course, we already talked about this tomb at length. Our knowledge of ancient Egyptians has increased through decades of bioarchaeological analysis, including dental morphological studies of their relatedness to other populations in North Africa and West Asia. This is how it is. In fact, with other teeth, this was already a thing, but now full genomic sequencing? Is it really that strange to think that people in Egypt would be from North Africa and this place? Considering how good these guys moved through the sea. I mean, is it really that surprising, or is it obvious? But we needed this, I guess, and it's not going to be enough, but hey, I'll take it. However, the lack of ancient genomes, particularly for the early periods of Egyptian dynastic history, yes, remain a barrier to our understanding of population continuity and gene flow in the region, absolutely. This is why, up to now, this is the first time that I focus on the really early dynastic history. Oftentimes, I talked about late Egypt, I talked about Middle Kingdom, but usually I've always been a little speculative when it comes to the early dynastic period, because more difficult, the further back in time you go, the harder it's going to be definitive about things, which is also another massive red flag with a certain community, because they are definitive about things that happened 5,000 years ago, allegedly. Instead, I'm like, guys, I think geographically, culturally, and looking at pattern trends of this period, it does make sense that Egypt would have been multicultural with intermixture of native North African populations, some black people, since the Sahara was not a barrier, and people from the Near East, ancient Egyptian multi-ethnic beginnings of this civilization, because it's a civilization in this specific area of the Mediterranean basin. It just makes logical sense. I can't prove it because we don't have a full genome, but now we do, and will you look at that? Now I'm going to speak about it, because I speak after I see the evidence. Although individuals from ancient Egypt were subjected to the first effort to isolate ancient DNA, direct genome sequencing has remained elusive. Alright, so we understand the difficulties. I think we can skip this part. And here is the individual. And there is a section here, by the way, which I will read. I know they'll try to use it against me. I will read it. There is a section where they say, they know for a fact this guy's from Mesopotamia ancestrally. But they say when it comes to trying and identify his phenotypic traits, that's the hardest thing, one of the hardest thing to do, because it's not easy to identify that through this kind of technology. But they did say it's likely that he had brown skin, dark brown skin, or possibly black skin. And it's fine, because I never said that they were white. So it doesn't debunk me in any way, shape, or form. And mind you, once again, when we say black skin, it doesn't automatically translate to a person from Congo or a person from the Horn of Africa. In fact, that ancestry is not present. Simply because someone has dark skin, I mean, just to show the obvious, this lady's from Asia. Right? This is an Indian. So, like, black skin doesn't automatically mean It's stupid to focus on this word, right? Because, oh, but today when we say someone is black, it means, I know, today, but we're talking about freaking... But anyways, I have to show the obvious, that dark skin does not automatically mean someone from Sudan or a Kushite and all that kind of stuff. You would say this is obvious. Some Asians do have dark skin. But regardless, this is the only part of this genomic sequencing that I don't know for sure because it's difficult to recognize. I think the guy had brown skin. Why do I choose that one? Because it's the one that we see the most in the pictorial evidence. Very simple. Who is scared? Poker Cave. Scared about what? What do you think I'm scared? Well, how am I scared? I'm literally here in front. I am in front of a camera. Most of my opponents never even show their freaking face. I'm here like this, in front of the camera. How am I scared?
You should be scared.
Yeah, of course, grandma might not appreciate this. See, that's the only thing. Emblazen is absolutely right. I think this is going to upset grandma. Let's just hope it doesn't give her a heart attack. About debunking everything once and for all. That's what I'm going to call it. They hate it when I do that, by the way, on my videos. Once and for all. This one is going to, once I edit this, it's going to have that title. Let's go. Radiocarbon dating of the skeletal remains show that the Nuwayrat individual died between this age here. Okay. So the result supports the initial archaeologist's assessment. The material culture and funerary practices at the site were consistent with those of the 3rd and 4th dynasties of the Old Kingdom. So we are really back in time here. So whoever wants to refute this, you can't use but this is the Ptolemaic period anymore. You can't use that one. You have to come up with something else. The body was placed in a large pottery vessel inside a rock-cut tomb. Fascinating. This treatment would have ordinarily been reserved for individuals of a higher social rank, class, relative to others at the site. Fantastic. As observed everywhere else during the early dynastic period and at the Old Kingdom royal cemeteries near the city of Memphis. Fantastic. All right. So, although, this is the part, acknowledging known limitations in predicting phenotypic traits in understudied populations, the Nuwayrat individual is predicted to have had brown eyes, brown hair, and a skin pigmentation ranging from dark to black skin with a lower probability of intermediate skin color. So this part about the phenotypic traits is all about probabilities. We don't know. But it doesn't matter because any skin he would have had, maybe he had olive skin, maybe he had that type of olive skin that would encompass brown skin as well, probably what I would say, or maybe he had black skin. It doesn't really matter because when you look at the rest of the study, he's genetically tied to the people of ancient Anatolia and Mesopotamia and the Levant. Here we are. Guy has Asian connotations. The individual was genetically male, consistent with the expressions of standard skeletal features. A further osteological examination revealed that he would have stood 157 to 160 centimeters tall, so it's kind of short. He lived to an advanced age for the time, approximately 44 to 64 years. Once again, there is a space because it's not easy to work with this level of details. The upper end of this range is the most probable. So he was kind of old, as evidenced by his heavily worn teeth and age-related osteoarthritis in most joints and vertebrae, in some cases severe. This so basically tells you that he was doing manual labor, an artisan of a craftsman of sort, because if you have manual labor in conjunction with an upper echelon, then it's usually craftsman or someone that has money but produces goods that are very expensive. This is huge. So he makes good money, right? Because if it's physical labor but it's a farmer, then he wouldn't be buried as someone who was upper class. So it's one of those things. Ramses made it to 93. I know, but Ramses probably had access to the best medicine and food of the period. This and various activity-induced musculoskeletal indicators of stress revealed that he experienced an extended period of physical labor, seemingly in contrast to his high-status tomb burial. The pattern of osteoarthritis and stress indicators further imply the form of physical activity that he routinely engaged in, which some researchers maintain can provide clues concerning occupation. In this case, although circumstantial, they are not inconsistent with those of a potter, as depicted in ancient Egyptian imagery. Estimates of biological affinity based on dental morphological features and cranial measurements parallel the genomic results below. Okay, so that's why I was telling you most likely this guy was an artisan. Okay, so we used the QPADM framework to model the genetic ancestry components that best represent the Nuwayrat genome using a fully rotating model competition approach in which a set of candidate populations there are candidate populations iteratively used as sources to conduct one source, 2 source and 3 source population ancestry models, whereas the remaining candidates are set as outgroups, right populations. We used a set of 13 populations from Neolithic and Chalcolithic West Asia, North Africa and North Mediterranean region that predate Nuwayrat individual as potential sources. Not even one did they feel they needed to use from the Horn of Africa or Sudan. Mediterranean region, North Africa, Chalcolithic West Asia, and Neolithic West Asia. No single source model fitted the data, and then it says model with Morocco. Instead, a single 2-source model, so it was mixed. It was a mixed individual, makes sense, met the significant criteria, which consisted of a mixture of 77.6 plus whatever. Ancestry represented by genomes from the Middle Neolithic Moroccan site. Okay, so he had some genetic ancestry from modern-day Morocco. And then this is the big one. And the remainder most closely related to genomes from 9000 to 8000 BC Neolithic Mesopotamia. A round of applause, guys. Round of applause. Right, in addition, 2 3-source models showed similar ancestry proportions, but with a minor contribution of a third ancestry component. Here's a third ancestry component, represented by genomes from the Neolithic, Chalcolithic, Levant. So this guy, 2 out of 3 components are from the Middle East. Ancient Egyptian. Old Kingdom. Oh, what a day. What a day, my friend. Here X represents the rotating sources of the QPADM model with the addition of Levantine, Paleolithic, Anatolian Paleolithic, and the Bronze Age Levantine genomes. It's a slam dunk. Yeah, and here, look, although the timing of the admixture event cannot be estimated directly, supplementary table 11 and supplementary note 4, this finding provides direct evidence of genetic ancestry related to the Eastern Fertile Crescent in ancient Egypt. Archaeological evidence lends support to the early Neolithic shared regional ancestry between Egypt and West Asia, because once again there is no wall here and there is a massive sea that can be navigated, so no shit Sherlock, given its proximity. See, I am saying the same thing that these guys are saying. So if you think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or my team, including the Egyptologist, as I've been accused by, know thyself, then are you going to say this about all of them? Are you the only repertoire of truth? How does that work? Are we all wrong? Seriously. Because we are saying the same exact things. It's just that I said it before the data, and they're saying it after the data. Still, it's here. I mean, some professors have been saying this before, but yeah. Egypt was one of the first external areas to adopt a Neolithic package that emerged across West Asia as early as the 6th millennium BC or before, which could have corresponded with movements of people. Absolutely corresponded with movements of people, because these people moved. These people loved moving. What can I tell you? If you have a problem with that, take it with the Phoenicians. Take it with the Mesopotamians. If you have a problem with that, just tell them. You know, you can find, I guess, somewhere where you can insult Mesopotamian. This period is concomitant with the observed gene flow from Mesopotamia to Anatolia, because, of course, this one happened too, and we know this is fully mapped already, which may have expanded into Egypt as well. I would say absolutely. I understand why they say may, because they're professionals. I'm going to remove the may, and we'll see. In support, a substantial change in odontometric and dental tissue proportions occurred approximately 6000 BC in the Nile Valley with, yeah, of course, because they settled into Neolithic farming societies, with general continuity thereafter. So also, you see, the general continuity is another thing that I often say, which is indicative to the fact that modern Egyptians are absolutely related to ancient Egyptians. Of course, it will vary. Obviously, there have been population reallocations even after that in the Middle Ages, Arab conquests and all that, absolutely. But the idea that the Islamic expansion would be enough to completely replace an entire people is ludicrous. It is ludicrous, because that would have needed a genocide of proportions that not even the freaking Nazis. Without modern weaponry, it just doesn't happen. People are moved around, but completely annihilate an entire ethnicity from a land that vast in a region so well connected is ridiculous to think. But why would they do it? When you conquer a land, you don't exterminate them, you tax them. Non-sponsored, ladies and gentlemen, non-sponsored. You know what's funny? I'm celebrating, Nicholas, if you knew. Ancient Egyptian Fanta. So here's the thing, guys. Let me say this, because now I'm being silly about it. But the only reason why I'm celebrating, because you'd be like, but why are you celebrating? Do you not like black people? Of course I do. Of course I do. It's just that I hate those people that have been calling me names for years. So this celebration is against them, because they kept calling me things for years. So this is fantastic. This is exactly, Rebecca. This is the only reason why I'm saying this. And I'm still the guy who says still some ancient Egyptians would have been black. I'm not trying to take anything away. In fact, if anything, I'm saying focus on those beautiful kingdoms that were fully black and stop these attacks ad hominem, because otherwise genetic sequencing now, the genetic sequencing proves me right. Now I'm going to celebrate. Me and every single one of you, regardless of your skin tone. You can be black, white, orange, for all I care, green. We can all celebrate together. It's not black versus white. It's truth versus lies. So let's celebrate. Celebrate. Finally. Celebrate against ignorance, arrogance, and ad hominem attacks. This is what I'm celebrating. Guys, here we are. And then continuing, nevertheless, we found that the Nuwayrat genome fits as an equally good source as Levant Chalcolithic groups for the West Eurasian related component of East African pastoralist genomes, of course, because there is, once again, population relocation from West Asia. Absolutely. Here we are, guys. Still missing from many putative source regions. I don't know what to tell you, guys. It's a massive GG. If you like this, give you conclusions. We know the conclusion is going to repeat the same thing. Fertile Crescent everywhere. Fertile Crescent, Fertile Crescent, Fertile Crescent. The one ancient Egyptians we find, Fertile Crescent, guys. So, what can I say? If you enjoy real data analysis and unbiased truth, please subscribe. This is the channel. You chose right. This is a celebration of you. You chose right, my friends. We were right.